Hello everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Crushcast. I am here with my guest, Loey.
Still sane, Doctor? I am the Elite Zero Level 1 guy, and we're here to have our spicy conversations about operators on this podcast.
People flock to us because we're the counterculture. We're stepping up to the big men. We're ugh. And so that's what we're here. We're here to talk about we're talking about big Arknights and how they're evil. But actually today I just wanted to kind of talk about certain design philosophies and operators that I do think are kind of both positive and negative, because I've preached in the past, and Loey, I'm sure you can agree with me, there is literally nothing wrong with enjoying meta units, and there's nothing wrong with playing the game in the meta way, as long as that is what you genuinely enjoy doing. You know, if you're in the mindset of, or not the mindset, because to me it's the mindset of of feeling that you need to play the meta is what can ruin the game for you. But if you're in a position where the most fun operators to you are the most powerful ones, then there's nothing wrong with that. However, as much as I am perfectly fine with admitting that there's nothing wrong with enjoying whatever operators you want to enjoy, I also do feel that there are just criticisms in how some of those operators are designed, because I do think that certain more modern design philosophies for 6 stars are a bit antithetical to how Arknights at its core is designed, because Arknights as a whole is a game that's kind of built around specialty, about having, it's the whole point of subclasses. Every subclass has their own role, and then each operator builds upon the specialty of that subclass into kind of forming their own niche. So, you have like Kawara is more, the baseline kind of protector. You look at Bubble. Bubble's a lot more specialized, meant to kind of have a more specific niche that plays into the protector subclass. And a lot of people have, in a recent community post, I had a lot of people tell me why they watch my channel. And a lot of it genuinely just comes down to the fact that I view Arknights a lot differently than a lot of other people do, which is kind of surprising to me. Because to me, I do think that it's engaging in this specialty is what makes the game fun. And so a big reason why I don't like a lot of modern 6-star designs is because when I do look at some of those 6 stars, they're very, very overgeneralized. And I've come to the complaint for Olpianus on many times where it's just like, oh, his talent is meant to give him defense. And, I don't like that, because to me, I don't think Crushers should have defense, because that's a core downside that's built into them, and I think that's a proper balancing mechanism that is good. I think that's a good thing. And so I think the main thing that kind of got me was what the fuck's her name? I can never remember her name. The new 6-star Reaper. You know what I'm talking about? I can't pronounce her name, nor ever remember it. I don't know. I'm trying to...
I just remember it starts with an E, and that's...
I thought it started with an A, so we're already not on... I'm already failing. CN. Okay, there we go.
Entelachia?
Yeah, Entelachia.
Entelachia?
Entelachia. Is there a pronunciation guide? No. Awesome. Okay. So the main thing, I guess the main, quote-unquote issue, it's just, she kind of really pointed this out to me, because it's an idea that I've had for a while, that, modern-day 6 stars, it's not just an idea that I've had, it's just the truth, that a lot of modern-day 6 stars try and take away from the innate downsides of their subclasses in order to make the in order to make the operator easier to use. And in the case of and and
Mm-hmm.
and in the case of this Reaper, she does
Yeah.
just on her base attack, she does 250 arts damage per second as a DOT. And then with her S3, she gains like a damage minimum. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, that doesn't really feel that characteristic for Reapers. Like, when has a Reaper ever done arts damage? When is a, like, Reapers are all about their innate self-sustain, but also about their AoE, and mainly just having really fast, spammy attacks. Like La Pluma is kind of like the perfect Reaper, in that kind of sense.
Yeah.
And I've never in my mind have ever wanted to use Reapers for the sake of like dueling bosses and stuff. Because when you use Reapers, you kind of just put them on the field as a general self-sustained lane holder. They're Mushas except with
Yeah.
2-block. And so when I look at this S3, I can't help but think like this is meant to like help with dueling bosses. And the fact that she does 250 arts damage per second's a lot. Like on normal attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like I look at that and I'm like, that's like now she becomes really good at dealing with like high defense targets. And it's like to me, when you have arts damage, because she's meant to be good against high defense, because that is something that Reapers struggle against. And to me, it is legitimately just like, oh, that's the point. You can even look at the first part, like that she steals max HP. And it's like, oh, that's kind of guaranteed damage. She's guaranteed to do 75 damage in a way. And so
Yeah.
I do think that it's like, the point of her is to just be as easy to use of a Reaper as possible, where she doesn't have any innate downsides. And that's just something that made me kind of think more and more about how a lot of these kinds of 6 stars are designed, and something that is very still prevalent in 5 stars. And that's that 6 stars are designed for comfort, or designed for use comfort. They're meant to be as easy and comfortable to use as possible, because it makes sense. It makes sense to me that you'll have people who will, as someone who has come to the defense of quote unquote bad operators, often the main criticisms for these operators just kind of is the jankiness of their kits, and it is naturally uncomfortable to use. And so naturally, when you try and find operators that are easier to use, you're going to gravitate towards operators that are generalists rather than specialists. Specialists not the class, but like operators that are more specialized for specific roles, because it is very easy to use a specialist operator incorrectly, but it's really easy to use a generalist operator correctly, because they can be applied to any situation, where specialists are a lot more difficult to use. And so when you have an operator like Winflet or Spuria, like people have complained that it's like, oh, why do they only buff a single like target? Or why do they only buff a single class? And it's like, well, to me, it's like, because that's their specialty. That's their point. That's the thing that they're designed around. But to many other people, they see that as a hindrance that makes the operator less comfortable to use. And so, for what I've come to kind of see, when you do try and everyone's, in this idea of just like, we need to get the operators need to be as easy to use as possible, you will end up supporting operator design that innately ruins the main point and specialty of a lot of subclasses. Because, as I've said, subclasses are meant to be specialized. As I said with Reapers are meant to be more kind of general lane holdy. They're really good against swarms. They're really good against, like, they have really good AoE, of really good self-sustain depending upon the matchup. And I am pretty sure they are the highest, they're the guards with the highest defense. So they're just really, really good for specifically just throwing them down to lane hold. And so you can still use them incorrectly. You don't put La Pluma down in front of Black Snake and expect her to do anything. But when you do have it is possible to misuse those operators, which can lead to discomfort, because you you misused them, whether you knew that or not. And so when you do have these kinds of super generalists where the goal is to just kind of make up for any foreseeable downside that the subclass could have in order to make them as generally appealing as possible, you end up with a bunch of operators that feel very distant from what their subclass actually is outside of just their base form. Of just like, oh, well, Anek Telekchia or whatever, she still does, she attacks up to block count. She heals off of stuff. She can't be healed normally. And so it's like, yeah, she's still a Reaper, but there's a lot more to being a Reaper than just how she functions on the surface. And so I do think that it is objectively bad design. Actually, I can't say that, because to me, good design is following proper specificity. It's making tools that are useful for players to use rather than just giving them tools that work for every single situation. And so I guess not objectively, but to me at least, I do find this to be bad design, which is funny. So I'd like to hear what you think.
Well, what I was thinking about was that to me the Reapers, that, like you said, they are focused on just being the generalist lane holder against like the trash mobs, right?
Yeah.
With good enough defense to not really take too much damage from them, and then their healing will put them through dealing with them and everything. But what La Pluma and Highmore, especially what they struggle with, is that as soon as an elite enemy that has maybe like 800 to 1,000 defense comes along and they hit hard enough to overcome their defense, that is when they struggle a lot. So
Yeah.
they're like really good against trash, but as soon as you get the harder enemies, then you have to really switch them out for someone else, or take that into account and like either buff them or put another operator to help them. So when you're talking about the 6-star design, like with this Reaper, she gets 135% attack and 100 attack speed plus a minimum amount of damage that she can do, as well as Executor Alter having the super high attack ceiling that allows them to deal with elites that the subclass is not really meant to deal with very easily, in a sense.
Yeah.
So it it kind of makes sense that yes, the 6-star is stronger, and so therefore obviously the 6-star should be able to deal with more stuff than the 5-stars. But at the same time, like you said, like the identity of what the Reapers are supposed to be good at, it's like, well, now they can go into other things that the other ones can't, to the extent where I don't need to replace the Reaper with a dedicated boss killer anymore, because they can kill the bosses themselves. And
Yeah.
the only thing I have to worry about is maybe using a Sculptor buff, or maybe using like a defender to, well, probably more like a Fastry to play like Gravel to tank for them for a few hits so that they don't take all the damage. But it's a lot less of a struggle for them in those situations by a huge margin. Like also, with this Reaper doing arts damage, it's like you said, like it's the elites that the other ones would struggle against. Well, they're no problem anymore. So it's just kind of weird. It's sort of like the when we look at Ray is a good example. Like the whole ammo mechanic for the hunters, it's like they wanted them to be like mystic casters, but then Ray's S3 instantly, well, just about instantly refills all of her ammo. So it's like, what's the point of the ammo mechanic?
Yeah.
And by the time she runs out of ammo again after using her skill, it only takes 20 seconds to charge, so then she can get her skill up again and do her massive damage. So the ammo mechanic is basically irrelevant. So, I mean, I guess it's a little bit of a different story for Reapers, but there are quite a lot of 6 stars that it's like, oh well, the other members of the subclass struggle with this or have this limitation. Let's just get rid of that limitation more or less entirely, when that is kind of like what the subclass was meant to be good at, sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Because I'm pretty sure Ray was meant to be a response to the feedback that I want to call them Reapers that Hunters got. Because I remember when Cold
Yeah,
Shot came
yeah.
out, people were saying not to build her because Ray exists. But people were complaining about the reload mechanic. People were complaining that it's like, oh, she just takes so long. And it's like, to me, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, that's the point. That's a downside in order to make
Yeah.
up for her immense upside. But also, Cold
Hmm.
Shot is designed in a way where she embraces the mechanics of the subclass in a very interesting way. The whole point of her is that you activate her
Right.
S2 while she has no ammo active, giving you this insane attack boost because of her talent. And so you don't see
Hmm.
stuff like that with Ray. She doesn't. Okay, Ray is actually, I think, a bad example because she actually does do a pretty good job of because I like Ray. She's one of the few 6 stars that I have upgraded or that I have at Elite 2. And that's because I think her S2 does a really good job of kind of making the ammo mechanic a lot more interesting. You know, you have the Burden Beast that you,
Right.
or Sand Beast or whatever, that you put down and that will collect your ammo. And so it kind of rewards you for placing it. Now, it's still stupid easy and it is meant to be a kind of like
Hmm.
fix for the ammo mechanic, but it kind of adds this nice little resource management mini game on top of it, which is what I think is really fun. And with her S1, you're rewarded for timing
Hmm.
her S1 properly so that it's killing something and then you're rewarded with more ammo. And to me, I think that that could have been Ray's like niche and that would have been something that I thought would be really fun. Like all of her skills reward you with more ammo if you can use them correctly. But like you said, her
Right.
S3 throws that completely out the window, and it's really obvious that her S3 is meant to make her really, really comfortable to use as an operator, where you can just throw her down, wait only 10 seconds because she's a 6 star, and all 6 star S3s have to start automatically fully charged. And then you click the skill, and she
Yeah, that
refills all of
annoys
her
me so
ammo.
much.
Yeah, like you click her, she does a bajillion damage, and then she most likely killed an enemy, so that she's going. You're getting back the skill in 20 seconds, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and it's like,
Right.
it's just this, to me, very lame 6 star kind of design of the S3 just being this incredibly super impactful skill that is just always able to be generally used in every single situation, which is something I even talked about in my recent Hodorer video, where I talked about the fact that his S1 has a downside that prevents you from using it like a generalist skill, which is something I liked. That the whole
You mean his
consumes.
S3?
Yeah. Did I not say his S3? Whatever. But
You said S1, and I'm like, what?
oh, okay, my bad. My bad. I love his S1 so much; it's always on my mind. But his S3, it consuming 100 HP every second prevents you from using his S3's heal as a general self-sustain skill. And to me, that's a clever way of
Hmm.
forcing you to use his S3 as a duelist skill. And to me, I wish that was kind of more how 6 stars were designed. Like they understand the subclass and they try and work in the strengths of the subclass rather than trying to fix the issues with the subclass. Because the quote unquote issues with the
Hmm.
subclass aren't actual issues. Those are just design. That's how you design things. When you in order to design specialty, you naturally need to add a weakness. Like it's like if you look at Connie Palat and you're like, oh,
Hmm.
Connie Palat sucks against things that aren't in the air with his S1, and it's like, yeah, that's the point. You're not supposed to be using him as a general caster. You're supposed to be using him for anti-air tech, or you're supposed to be using him for like AoE crowd control with his S2. You're not. You more to use him as like a support operator. You're not supposed to be using every operator as a super generalist. And that's a big like thing
Hmm.
that I don't like about a lot of like modern 6 stars is that because every 6 star is meant to kind of fix the issues with their subclasses, it ends up throwing away the nuance of those subclasses. And so now it kind of melds all of these operators together as just the generally good operators that hold lanes and kill bosses. Like, that's just kind of what they all are. And then you look at, like, snipers, and it's like, oh, well, they don't hold lanes. They just kill bosses really, really good. And it's like everything just kind of melds into this goop, this slop of generally good thing. And at that point, it's like, there's not much to... Because there's no nuance between the certain specific strengths of each operator, everything is generically good always all the time. The only thing that you can actually compare is their DPS. And that's why you have, like, oh, who has higher DPS? Mjolnir or Hoderer or Executor or whatever. You know, who has the best DPS? I don't know why I thought Executor, but because we were talking about him. But you know, you have all of these. You know, it's like, oh, who's better, WIS'ADEL or Logos? And it's like, well, neither of them have downsides. Both of them are just strictly upsides. And so the only thing you can really compare is just which one does more damage. And now you've reached a point where, because to me, this is what the meta discussion is about. The reason why it can only talk about, like, who does more damage rather than trying to talk about the niches and the use cases is purely because that's all they can talk about. They've voted with their wallet, and they've told people that the only thing that you can buy, the only thing you can buy into are things that are comfortable. You know, pull for operators you find to be comfortable, and because of that, we keep getting more and more comfortable operators. And if an operator isn't comfortable, then people are going to say don't buy that because they're uncomfortable to use. That's the whole thing with Hoderer. To me, it's like, you know, Hoderer is, you shouldn't pull for Hoderer because he has, you know, no defense, and that's difficult to manage. And it's like, first off, uses S1, stop using S3s for everything, you silly billies. And secondly, the game is designed around specialty. The game is designed in a way where you're supposed to be utilizing the weaknesses of one subclass with the strengths of another. And so it's like, to me, you have... It's like looking at Kawara and complaining that she doesn't do damage, when it's like, well, obviously not, because she's meant to be a defender. You're supposed to support her with things that do damage. You know, and it's like... I guess, like, in the case of, like, Shu, you know, she doesn't do a lot of damage, but she's so incredibly good at what she's meant to do, of being just a support operator, but she's kind of concept crept the whole point of like a support operator to where she also buffs attack. She also buffs attack speed with the little seeds. I think it's both attack. I think I'm right. Is it attack and attack speed and passive healing?
Yeah, it's 25% attack and attack speed. I actually like that that she has that part in there from someone who uses the Sui siblings a lot. Well, other than Ling, I don't use Ling very often, but from using the other ones quite frequently, I do like in her skill 3 that she does have that damage boost, and the reason being is because it has a relatively long cooldown for how long the duration is, so it's supposed to be the super skill. And unlike a lot of 6 stars these days, it has a genuinely long downtime, especially if she is your main healer. So having that extra supportive ability...
That's fair.
Really does help out. But for me personally, I actually use her skill 2 a lot more because of the shorter cooldown and... Well, it also has shorter duration, but the shorter cooldown makes it so that I am able to have it up whenever I need it, rather than being like, oh, I need to use S3 like against a boss or something.
Yeah. I think
so. There is that big part of it.
I was more just trying to get into the fact that it's like Shu doesn't necessarily have like a specific identity to her, rather than just kind of being support operator. Like, she just kind of does all of the things that's supporting, that, you know, she does all of the support. She boosts attack speed, she heals, she gains her second talent does even more support stuff. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
all of the support, and it doesn't really kind of. There's no specific niche when I look at Shu. She is just a generic support operator kind of thing. Like it's difficult to kind of understand what niche Shu is meant to be, rather than just kind of being this the guardian.
That is, I kind of agree with that, but at the same time, I do want to point out that a lot of people, when Shu came out, a lot of people obviously compared her to Saria, who was the previous 6-star, well, the only 6-star guardian at the time.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there was Blemenshine too, but for Blemenshine is more offensive oriented, and Saria is more defensive oriented, and consistent healing. What the main difference between Saria and Shu is that if you look at Shu's S2, she heals 2 people, and it has a bigger range. Well, actually, no, I take that back. Saria's S2 has a bigger range, but my point is that it is a short cooldown duration skill. So let's just say you fight an elite, then you have the duration and healing to sustain her for that elite, whereas Saria is more so for that just pure consistent AFK healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that really does make it so that Shu does feel different than Saria for their respective niches of what they're meant to do. And then Saria also has the higher defense because of her talent, whereas Shu has the damage reduction and health regen over time, which is, in my opinion, is more valuable than Saria's higher defense, but at the same time, there are circumstances where Saria's higher defense does matter.
Yeah.
So they feel different enough where they do feel like they earned their spot in the subclass, whereas like Logos for an example, like his S3 is just, oh, give him quadruple attack, attacks 4 targets at once with
He's a
a
great primal
relatively short
caster.
cooldown for, yeah, with a relatively short cooldown for how strong the skill is. He gets huge attack range, and then of course his module adds the necrosis. So he doesn't even feel like a core caster anymore. He's just an AoE caster at that point.
Yeah.
Because 4 targets is kind of like the point where if you have more than 4 targets, either you're being overwhelmed or, well, let's face it, Logos does so much damage, they're all going to die anyway. So it kind of doesn't matter what his number of targets is anyway. So Shu is definitely a lot better designed of what she's supposed to do rather than these other 6-stars that are just kind of like, hey, just give them a bunch of stats
Yeah.
and make them have bigger range, attack more than one target, because everything needs to attack more than one target apparently these days. you know,
Yeah.
a little bit different.
The weird thing that bugs me about Logos is that the fact that he hits more than one target is meant hitting multiple targets is meant to be part of the primal caster subclass identity and is meant to be like a selling point for them. Because that's not really something you see in other casters. And so Logos does it significantly better than all of the primal casters do, and it's just like, what the fuck's the point? But as you were saying
Logos.
as you were saying, you can continue. My bad.
Logos. That was kind of my biggest problem with him, is his Delta mod. I mean, I get they wanted him to be strong because he's an elite operator in the lore, so he should be strong, and I understand that. but his Delta module allowing him to deal necrosis damage is what really annoyed me the most about his kit. I mean, even though that his S3 has so much ridiculous stats on it, the breaking point was the necrosis damage, because it's like, okay, he reduces res and he does necrosis damage based on his arts damage. Well, that's not a problem because he reduces res, unlike the primal casters. So it's like,
Yeah.
what is the point of the primal casters when he deals extra elemental damage to necrosis enemies anyway, and he can apply it himself? You don't need Virtuosa, you don't need Valaraquin. He does it all on his own
Yeah.
and gets the full benefits. Well, not full benefits, because Nymph does do more damage than him in those specific situations, but he does such a good job by himself. What is the point of the primal casters in the first place then, if he applies the element himself and also gets bonus elemental damage from said elemental damage, and he can apply it fairly easily because of the minus res talent?
Yeah, it
It's
is just meant to be just a clusterfuck of stuff. And again, it even like the whole like minus res thing is another thing that just kind of bugs me, because it's like I remember I'm pretty sure it was Viviana, but it's like people were shitting on Viviana because she didn't like ignore resistance like Surtur, and it's like the fuck like yeah, the whole point of resistance as a mechanic is that it reduces arts damage. And it's like, well, no,
right.
well, that's a downside for the operator, that they can't ignore the mechanic that's meant to make the operator more
Counter
specialized.
them, yeah.
And the whole point with like, now you have Logos, who not only does a shit ton of arts damage, reduces resistance, but also basically does true damage because of the necrosis and the, his module giving him the elemental
Right.
damage. It's just genuinely, this is this is the extent of what playing for comfort gets you. You get an operator that does literally everything, has no downsides, and just lets you beat a stage incredibly easily. And it's just like, well, at that point, you're not really playing a game anymore. You're just kind of like having a guy beat a stage for you. And it's like, is that why you play Arknights? Because it's comfortable to. Because obviously, when you're playing for comfort, when the point of the game is to just play with the most comfortable operators possible, you end up you don't want to be challenged, which sounds fucking mean, but it's like, when you're challenged, you're naturally uncomfortable. And that's the point of every operator having their own upsides and downsides and having their own specializations, is that if you use an operator incorrectly, you're going to be uncomfortable because you're using the operator incorrectly. And so, to make the game as comfortable and easy to play as possible, you just have these operators that do literally fucking everything. And I guess the point I was trying to make with Shu, because you did make a good point, but the main point I was trying to make with Shu is that she does all of the things. That it's very, like, you can just
Yeah,
have
that's
Shu.
fair.
And it's like, oh, well, she buffs attack, and she gives a restoration, and she does, like, all of these different things, and her S3's got the funny teleportation gimmick, but that's, that's funny. That's fine. And the whole, her second talent just being like, oh, you get, even more buffs. Now, she's a she gives SP, she gives attack, she gives sanctuary, she gives HP, and it's like, she does all of the things that normally like 4 or 5 different other operators would do. It's like, why does she give sanctuary when that's kind of the thing that like Quirkus does? What the fuck? Abjurers do. The whole point, like,
Abjurers, yeah.
yeah, and it's like, why does she give SP when that's something that typically you'll find in like supporters? It to me, it just seems like she's just meant to be a kind of a clusterfuck of all of the good support things, and that's why she's good, rather than she has a specific niche that she's carved out that takes advantage of the strengths of Guardians. Instead, she's just all of the good things, which is what bugs me.
Yeah, that's That's a fair point because yeah, I mean, of course, because I use Dusk a lot of the time. Shu's talent, I kind of think that they added that purely because they wanted, because of the popularity of niche knights in general, that they wanted to make the faction of the Suis to synergize a little bit as time goes on.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense. And I think her second talent does do that pretty well. But you're right. The other parts of it that are not part of the Sui squad just kind of feel a little bit tacked on. I mean, they're not really even that impactful. Like 12% max HP for most operators. Like, what's that? 400 HP to a lane holder.
Oh, that's
Like, I'm
over
not really sure you
600.
would even notice that.
That's over 600 HP. I don't know what you're talking about. Who else are you buffing? No, but yeah, you're right. But to me, it's just all of the things. But no, you're right. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
I it
I do understand that complaint about
I
how
think you're
Shu's talent is out.
I think you're right though, in that it's like, what if Shu was meant to be the Sui support operator? Like, what if her kit was designed to be more oriented towards Sui operators? And it's like, yeah, she wouldn't be as traditionally good, but now she's carved out like a niche. Like, imagine if her second talent was
Mm-hmm.
literally just like, if there are at least 4 Sui operators, or maybe it's like, if there are 2 Sui operators, all operators gain this. If there are 3 Sui operators, all operators gain this. If there are 4, they all gain this. It's like in
Mm-hmm.
like a reclamation algorithm. That's not. Is that what it's? That's what it's called, right? No,
That
it's
that would have actually, in my personal opinion, that would have actually made Shu a lot more interesting
yeah. That yeah
if
yeah
they just went all in on that, because even though that, yes, the Suis are all limited and it's like, I don't know, not
Limited
really pay
operators
to
are a
win
scam, by the
because
way.
you could they're not really like, you can get them obviously without paying money, but like a luxury for people who have
Yeah.
saved for these limited banners. But at the same time, like having that extra buff for you using them, I don't know. Like it kind of makes them feel a little special in a
Yeah.
way with
Yeah.
Shu's talent, and it does buff. Well, it does buff Dusk by a decent amount, and also it fixes Chung Yu's issue with SP and getting his skill 3 going. So it does help a lot of the older Sui siblings to get things going, but
Yeah.
at the same time, like, I can I can understand like why people wouldn't like, oh well, you have to use 4 super strong limited operators in a squad to get this overpowered buff.
Yeah, and
Like, I
it's
could
like,
get why that would rub people the wrong way.
first off, abyssal hunters. People eat that up. But no, you're right. Because the main reason why they wouldn't do that is because it would be negatively, people wouldn't like that. But to me, I do think that is the correct design decision to make. Maybe you don't not. It doesn't have to be specifically like Sui tribal, but or actually, that brings up a where at least something more on my ground, something more familiar with me. What's her name? What's her name? There we are. Leto. Because I remember everyone
Oh yeah.
called Leto bad. I think I want to bring up Leto because I think she's a good example of kind of what we are talking about how Shu could be. Is that the whole point of Leto is
Yeah,
that she's
definitely.
meant to be. What something I do find funny is that in Magic the Gathering terms, to have like a creature buff up a bunch of other creatures of a specific creature type, they're called lords. And so Leto is a lord for Ursus, Ursus governing group, self-governing group operators, and to me that's hilarious. But I remember people like when Leto came out, people were calling Leto bad because she's niche, And even when you do look at like the Ursa self-governing group operators, it's like, oh wow, I can activate Gummy's S1. Cool.
Hmm.
And so it's I
You know what is?
understand that people would be like, oh yeah, it's a little jank, but to me, I think this is a really cool tool to be added to the kit of Arknights, even if it is restricted to kind of requiring a bit of,
Hmm.
operator synergy. I would be a little pissed if it was purely that, but Leto, especially with her module, gains a shit ton of attack speed on her own, and she's capable of, like, doubling her attack rate. So she actually can be really, really strong just on her own. But I do think that 32 attack speed is a fucking lot. But, Leto kind of being her niche being she's meant to be this kind of lord for a specific operator group. To me, that's a fun tool to add to the game. It doesn't matter if it's explicitly the
Hmm.
most amazing thing ever, but it allows for interesting strategies. It allows for interesting use cases. I don't think that we should just be given like a shit ton of these kinds of tribal support operators, because then I think, it might just muddy the waters and we'll just have too many of them. But to me, I think that this is kind of what
Hmm.
what uh what Shu kind of should have been. To where she can still stand alone. She doesn't need like Sui operators, but she becomes a lot of what her niche is meant to be is supposed to be focused around Sui operators. And I think those kinds of operators are a lot more interesting. And I do think it's
Hmm.
Abyssal Hunters I do think kind of fail at that because they are already good on their own, and then they just have an Abyssal Hunter trait tacked onto them just because that's what Abyssal Hunters do. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, that could have been like
Yeah.
an interesting talent rather than whatever the hell Ask Gen gives, like 12 attack speed.
And speaking of Leto as well, when she was coming out, I mean, I had no desire to build her on my normal account. So, I mean, I was glad that she was playable, but at the same time, I looked at her kit and like because of how far along I am, I'm kind of more looking for those niche specific operators that support how I generally play, and I don't really use a lot of the Ursa student self-governing group. But
Yeah.
when I heard that people were saying that she was a terrible operator, I looked at her S2 and her module, of course, looking at how much attack speed she gets, and she gains that huge attack bonus. It's like, how do we get to the point where someone giving herself like 40 attack speed if she has her module trait active and like 1600 attack, how is that terrible?
Exactly. Yeah.
Have we really
Yeah.
gotten to the point where like what is even good at this point? Like people were complaining about how Pepe had bad survivability and that she had short range and all this stuff, and I'm just sitting there looking at her S3. And it's like, how do we get to the point where having an operator who does 6,000 attack per hit in a humongous AoE and stuns, so any elite enemy that isn't a boss that
WIS'ADEL on the
isn't going to
ground.
be stunned, yeah, that isn't stun immune is going to get destroyed, and any boss that can be stunned will be destroyed. And there are so many ways to circumvent her survivability issues. Like the fact that so many people didn't like Pepe was just baffling to me.
Yeah.
And in the same way for Leto, it's like we've gotten to the point where, oh, if you do 1600 attack, what is 1.3? Let me do the math here. 1.3 divided by, so like every zero point 0.9 seconds. How is that terrible? I just don't I don't get it. I mean, sure, she's not gonna be deleting those Patriot shield guards with 2,000 of defense. Like, sure, but
But that's a downside.
at the same time,
Because again, it's a
like, you know what I
matter
mean?
of,
I
yeah,
just don't
I
get it.
do. It's ridiculous. And again, it's a matter of comfort. It's like often a lot of these assessments are made by people who just have one bad experience with the operator while they're unexperienced with the operator, and just kind of use that experience to generalize the operator. But again, yeah, it's like, yeah, Pepe is an Earthshaker, and Earthshakers don't have, amazing survivability. But
Hmm.
that, again, is fine. It's okay for a subclass to not excel in
Yeah.
literally every single regard. Like, she's meant to be an offensive kind of generic lane holdy, or just, Earthshakers in general are meant to be just generic lane holdy kind of, they're meant to be decent at AoE, guards. And so to have, it's okay for them not to have 6k HP and not to have 800 defense. Like, that's fine. It's okay for operators to have
Hmm.
downsides to balance out their upsides. And I guess to me, it is just
Yeah.
like you were given. I think the best example is WIS'ADEL. That you have an operator that
Yeah.
has literally can't be killed and just does a bajillion damage. You cannot you. It is so hard to be punished for using WIS'ADEL incorrectly. You can use Pepe incorrectly, even though it's really hard to do so. But you can't use WIS'ADEL
Hmm.
incorrectly. Because you put her down, she hides behind her stupid
Right.
little arts damage dealing slowing rocks. She can't be targeted,
Oh,
so
I
you can
hate those
place
so
her.
much.
We can talk about WIS'ADEL. She the
Okay.
she's designed in a way where you are never punished for using her incorrectly. And the worst part is that the main upside of WIS'ADEL, her insane instance damage on her S3, goes completely against how flingers are designed. It's so
Right.
stupid.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like, this is what these people want. These people, it's a rude way of putting it, but when you are, when the end goal is comfort, when the downsides of an operator and the ability to use an operator incorrectly leaves you not enjoying the game, then this is what you want.
Hmm.
Operators that are physically impossible to use incorrectly and can just be generally applicable to every single stage. And to me, that completely ruins the point of the game. It's completely antithetical to how
Hmm.
Arknights is designed at its core. Arknights is a game about subclasses. Arknights is a game about the specific about the is designed in a way around the specialty of each and every operator, what they excel in, and they have their weaknesses that draw them back. And to
Hmm.
me, the only place where that kind of game is still around is with 4 and 5 stars, which is why I use them a lot of the time. Is just because all of the 4 and 5 stars feel balanced, not because you honestly can't compare a lot of them. Like, how do you compare like Mint and Shamare? Like, you can't. They're two completely different operators, which, is obviously common sense. You can't compare a Hexer to a Phalanx caster, but that's because they're meant to specialize in two different regards. Yet, if you were to have like a 6-star Hexer,
Hmm.
it would probably be something that's just like, oh, well, they amplify all damage by 200%, and they reduce defense and resistance by 90%, and they themselves do, they themselves probably wouldn't do a bunch of damage, but they'd make everyone else do a bunch of damage. And then you would genuinely be able to have a conversation between, like, oh, who's better, this Hexer or Lyn, purely when it comes to the regard of who is capable of doing more damage, rather than trying to look at, oh, well, Mint is a Phalanx caster. She's a tank that you can place on a range tile and can deal with AoE stuff, where someone like Shamare is good for debuffing. You can use, her S2 to just completely nerf any enemy into the ground, or use her S1 to help amplify damage against enemies where her S2 wouldn't be as effective. And so you lose a lot of that
Hmm.
nuance when you are purely playing for comfort. You lose a lot of that nuance when the end goal of the game is to just have these objectively best operators. And it just sucks because it's That's why I play Arknights, because it's a really, really well crafted game. And I am so glad, I am so happy that Hypergriff still releases 5 stars every single fucking update. I am so grateful of the fact
Hmm.
that I get to play with Techno, because she's fun and she's awesome. I remember when we were talking about
Yeah.
when you're talking about shapercasters, I'm like, oh, shapercasters have like no design space. They're, they're kind of weird. Techno looks fun, but nah, she actually kind of flipped my mind. I actually do think that you probably could do some more cool stuff with shapercasters, but again, I don't think they have the most wide design space. But then
Right. Yeah.
and she has her own weird niches. She has her own use cases, and a lot of that use case purely just is because she's a shapercaster, which is again why I think she has a little. Shapercasters have very little design space. But then you can talk about like Ablana, and it's like, why are you using Ablana? DPS. That's it.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the reason why I would want to use Techno is because of her nature as a shapercaster, being able to kind of make these chump blockers, being able to gang up on someone with all of her little summons. There's a lot of cool things you can do with her. But then when you kind of look into the 6-star side of things, when you look into the metagame, the more gotcha game of Arknights, everything is just a DPS test because no operator is allowed to have downsides. And to me, again, that's why I don't like a lot of that stuff. It's why I think that that's kind of a dumb conversation to have in the grand scheme of Arknights, because that's not why I think Arknights is a good game. Arknights is obviously good because of the story and the characters and that kind of stuff. But at its core, the reason why I play Arknights is because the gameplay is just so fucking good. And a huge, huge part of that
Hmm.
is the fact that only in Arknights can there be obviously, haha, Crushers. But a huge reason why I like Crushers is because it is evidence to me of Arknight's really, really uh, well-made subclass system. That only in Arknights can we have a subclass that has insanely high HP, insanely high attack, and 0 defense. Only in Arknights, in a game where the developers actually care
Hmm.
about operator specialty, can you have a subclass in a group of operators that have 0 defense, because they actually do care and are
Hmm.
willing to give operators downsides to make up for cool upsides, that they're allowing for really cool design space and really cool niches. And so, yeah, it does suck when people call Leto bad, because she has a specific niche and she does the niche well. And by the way, her S1, I think this is the first time I've ever been excited to Mastery 3 Swift Strike, because that's 45 attack speed with her S1, 32 attack speed with her talent. Like, that's what,
Plus 12 from the module
yeah,
trait.
plus 12 from the module trait. So that's what, 89 attack speed? So,
Something like that. Yeah.
yeah, so you're telling me I can have a Lord with 89 attack, with plus 89 attack speed just from herself? Yeah, that sounds a little fun. Like, that sounds
Hmm.
quite interesting. And it's gimmicky, it's stupid. I don't give a shit, because that's why I play Arknights, for the dumb, stupid, gimmicky
Hmm.
things that make the game fun. Like, you will never hear me complain about Shoes S3 teleporting things, because to me, that sounds cool. That's a cool mechanical thing. What does that have to do with Guardians? I have no fucking idea. But I do think that it's a cool design space, and maybe you could have played into that element of Shu a bit more. Maybe her skills bind enemies. Maybe she's meant to be a kind of cool crowd controller guardian. Like, maybe that's the element that you lean into, rather than just making
Hmm.
her all of the good things at once. And I think, we can talk
Right.
about WIS'ADEL if you want, or unless you have something to say.
Well, I was gonna piggyback on what you said about Arknights being a game where crushers can exist. I also want to point out, like, just the fact that Hypergriff, even with all of these subclasses in the game, they are still willing to experiment and create new subclasses.
Yeah.
And that is so amazing to me. I mean, just think of what we have gotten kind of recently. I mean, we got the Sky Rangers, I mean, who would have thought,
Yeah.
blocking flying units, that
And there's so much more
is like a foreign
nuance.
concept.
There's so much more nuance on
Yeah,
top of just that. It's like, oh,
precisely.
they're invincible when they're in the air, and it's like there's like you can do so much cool shit
Hmm.
with that. And it's like that's what gets me excited about Arknights. It's the fact
Yeah.
that you can just give me one thing, 1 inch. Oh, okay, Sky Rangers are like three things, but they're three different things. It's like there's a
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
cool elements to Sky Rangers that add complexity onto the game. There's more layers, more ways for me to fail, more ways for me to fuck up. A new kind of dynamic of the game that I can explore and understand rather than just, oh, number go
Hmm.
up, thing go boom. And it's like
Hmm.
it's that kind of stuff that really really excites me. And same thing with alchemists. It's like it's a cool mechanic. It's a really cool kind
Hmm.
of mechanic thing, and
Yeah, they
Thorns
are.
is a pretty cool operator. He's pushed, but he's a cool operator. And Tin Man is fucking awesome. It's
Hmm.
although I will say it does feel like a lot of the more recent subclasses purely exist just for a single 6-star. Like feels like
That
Earthshakers only
that is
exists
kind of
for
true. Yeah.
yeah, it's like Earthshakers only exist for Pepe, Shapers only exist for Ablana, that kind of stuff. I hope to God we get more alchemists. They're
Yeah.
so cool. They're so cool.
Yeah. 4-star alchemist when,
Honestly, true. I
or
do think
another
alchemist should be
five
a
star.
4-star. Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, you're right. It's
And I
like,
was also going.
and they
I
always
was also
release.
gonna point out loop shooters as well,
Oh, true. Yeah, loop shooters are
with
a
how cool those are.
yeah. It's like they're snipers, but what if they had this interesting gimmick where their attack speed is like is reliant on how fast the projectile flies. And it's like, oh, that is kind
Hmm.
of interesting. Now, again, it's difficult to kind of design that thing, and I'm surprised they managed to get Bridget out of it. Although I say that like I really even know anything about what Bridget does. That's not her name. Is it
Um,
Bridget? What is her name?
it
Brid
is Bridget. Yeah.
Brigid with a D. Okay.
Well, okay.
I thought it was Bridget.
On the only thing that I am sad about for her specifically, with being the 5-star, of course, released
Ooh.
after Narantuya, is that if you have Narantuya, she really overshadows Bridget in basically every way,
Yeah. But
and that
that's
is just very unfortunate.
That's kind of what I've come to expect. That 6-star, just nowadays, it's like 6-stars are always going to be the best operator in the subclass, and we've reached a point of power creep where there just isn't nuance. Like, yeah, there might be one or two situations where, like for example, there are situations where I've genuinely used like wind chimes over Hodorer because of her S2, but
Hmm.
like fun fact, wind chimes and Warfarin can solo 11-6, I think, while Hodorer and Warfarin can't solo 11-6. So it's like, yeah, there are weird nuances that like the 5-star can outperform the 6-star, but 99.9% of the
Hmm.
time, the 6-star is always objectively better. And so it's always weird to me when you do have people that evaluate 5-stars on 6-star terms, because it's like I don't know what you're expecting.
Hmm.
Because again, it's like 5-stars will remain to have specialty. They remain to be niche. They remain to expand upon design concepts, while 6-stars are always just going to be the best option possible because that's what people want. People want easy to use operators. And so I'm not
Hmm.
saying that I'm happy that Narantuya is just kind of the best, but I also do think that it's just kind of what's expected. It's I mean it's a big reason why I do enjoy
Yeah.
old 6-stars, because they do definitely feel like they're part of the old specialized design. Like you look at Chen and it's like, oh well, she's not like, when I look at Chen, I don't think she's strictly better than Cutter. It's like, no, I think, oh, Chen has her whole niche with her offensive damage. She also does some arts damage. She's just a different
Your mic
kind
is
of my mic. My mic's fucked up. Loey?
Microphone amazing.
Oh, it's happening to you too. Oh no. Oh god damn it.
Is it better now?
Yes it is. Yes it is. Woo.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
it fixed itself.
All right, maybe just some internet
Wonderful.
thing.
Okay,
Go.
back to what you were talking about.
Okay, can we I need to do something real quick so it's easier to find this in editing. Can we both just like scream into the mic right now? So the audio peaks and I know exactly where to go. Ah! Okay, thank you. Ah! Okay, so now when I go into editing, the audio is going to peak right here and I know exactly what to cut out rather than having to search for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Nice. Good thinking there.
Fuck, now we lost train of thought. Okay, yeah, that I don't think that it's fair to compare 6 stars to 5 stars like ever. And it does kind of suck that 5 stars are always going to be left out of the conversation purely because they can never compete with 6 stars when that's not what they're meant to be. And so it is just two different types of games. It's like the game side of Arknights is more focused around the specialty of operators, while the more gacha game of Arknights is more focused around the meta and ease of use. And as I was saying with like Chen, when I think of Chen, I don't think that she's strictly better than Cutter. I just think of her as another sword master with her own niche of like, oh, well, she gives like automatic charge to offensive charge. I think that's kind of cool. While, you know, then you look at like Deegan Breaker and it's like, what's Deegan Breaker's niche? She inflicts fear and she has auto recovery skills. Which, I mean, technically Chen has, but you know the whole controversy with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's, to me, there's at least some nuance when it comes to like discussion about older 6 stars, where with nowadays it's like all 6 stars are just kind of strictly better than their 5-star counterparts, and that's just how the game has kind of gotten. And to me, I think that the reason why that's the case, the reason why we've experienced so much power creep, is because people prioritize ease of use than niche or specialty or interesting, you know, gameplay dynamics, which is such like a pretentious thing to say, to be like, oh, you're just not playing the game the right way. But it's like, to me, that is kind of what's happening. It's like Hypergriff made a game. The game is really well made, and it's all about, you know, trying to figure out which operators work in which situations. And people instead preferred it if you had, you know, individual operators that were better at, that specialized in everything. And were just so easy to use that you can just apply them to every single situation. And at that point, the main design goal of the game is now ruined. And now it's like you're playing a completely different game. You're just playing a generic gacha game at that point. And that's kind of my main criticism of it. It's like metagaming Arknights is playing a completely different game than something that I play, which I think is why, you know, I have been able to like have a community of people who are like, wow, you think about the game so differently. And it's like, well, to me, I don't think that I'm thinking about the game differently. I'm just thinking about it how I'd think about any other game. But I think most other people are just so used to other gacha games, so that's just always how they approach Arknights. Or maybe they do just would prefer it if Arknights was just significantly easier to play.
Yeah, and going into that, well, we can branch off to talk about WIS'ADEL a little bit, but I wanted to mention that when you're talking about like how people value the meta, I remember when WIS'ADEL was coming out, or when she was on CN, so many people were like, you have to pull her, you have to save for her, you have to have this character. And when she did come out on Global, you know, like seeing pull sessions of like, congratulations, you won the game.
Yeah.
Or even to newer players, like, congratulations, you have the strongest character in the game. It's gonna let you breeze through the early game, and you essentially won the game. Like, to me, that that really rubbed me the wrong way, because in my personal opinion, the early game of Arknights isn't. I know that it's maybe it's hard for me to see it as it is because I'm a veteran player and
Yeah.
I've been playing for so long.
Yeah.
But I don't see the first two chapters or even the first three chapters of the game being very hard, and they
Oh,
teach
they're
you the
not. They're
basics
not.
very very well, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet at the same time, when you're using WIS'ADEL, because nothing has defense at the beginning of the game other than those defenders that start showing up in the chapter 2, I think it is.
Yeah. The
They're
shield
still
guards.
gonna steamroll. They're still gonna steamroll the game, even without a built WIS'ADEL.
Yeah.
Like Elite Zero Level 1 WIS'ADEL, I have used her a few times before in testing Annihilation 2, because I'm still stuck on trying to get 400 out of 400 with a full Elite Zero Level 1 squad. And I can tell you, against early game enemies, she is overpowered. She
Yeah.
shreds through them, and her skill with the additional aftershocks, them doing extra damage and having the bigger splash radius, like, people really shove away her skill 1 and skill 2, but at the very beginning of the game especially, they are so incredibly strong. So when I see it as like a new player should be getting used to learning how the game plays and paying attention to the lessons that the game is trying to learn, and yet when these content creators pull for them, they're like, "Congratulations, you've won the game." Like, I don't. Maybe it's just me, but I don't see that as a positive.
No. Yeah. I
How
100%
does
agree.
how
Yeah.
does how does ruining the beginning part of your experience a fun? Well, I mean, maybe it's a fun for like the spectacle of seeing explosions happen, but
Yeah. Like
but
the
it's
initial
just one of those
dopamine
things.
of just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, look, I can
Once
now
that
breeze through these stages.
once that wears off, you are left with, oh, well, what if you decide, I think it was um Quirk and Clay, they started the game like maybe a month or two before WIS'ADEL came out, and as soon as they started relying on her so much in that early game, I don't think they really learned the lessons that the game was really trying to teach them, because they were obviously steam throwing through that. And then Quirk actually decided to stop using her at one point and try to play the game properly, and I think he did become a much better player by doing so. I haven't really kept up with those two specifically for a little bit now, but I'm just
Yeah.
that really gets to me a little bit, like just the mentality that and the like celebration that people had for this, and getting into her kit, because I do want to point out, I do want to make a dedicated video on WIS'ADEL specifically, because whenever I bring up either Rosmantis or like a flinger in general, like before getting Rosmantis, I would specifically only use Grey Altar on my Elite Zero level 1 clears, because I I would go so far to say that I hated the E2 design of WIS'ADEL's kit. So
Yeah.
going into it, her
I
her skill 1 and
Before
skill
we do
2
though,
I think are
I
perfect.
want to add a bit more onto what you were saying.
Oh,
Then after we
okay.
can get into
Yeah,
that,
go ahead.
but that
Mhm.
yeah, as you were saying, it's like you have this celebration of having overpowered things, and I've made it a point very, very much, in my videos, that the learning curve of Arknights is so fucking important, and it was something that I really went into detail with in my
Mhm.
Doberman video, where I talk about the whole idea of you need to value your low rarity operators, because due to their basic kits, they help you understand the functionality and the niche and the specialty of what those classes and subclasses are meant to do. And that helps you further understand the niches and specificities and the use cases for, upcoming operators. And it's really, really, really important for that. And so it's so interesting. And something that I've had the interaction with a lot is that there are just some things that the meta, or there are some things that most players just do not value purely because there is no value in having it in the meta. Like I've had like a common complaint people have had about like dreadnoughts is that they only have one block. And I'm thinking like, are you insane? Like that's the whole point of dreadnoughts is that they only have one block. It's like, yeah, dreadnoughts are horrible, lane holders. And it's like, well, yeah, because they're meant to be pickers. They're meant to intercept enemies and are meant to get rid of like annoying, casters or that kind of stuff. And often the response to that is just like, oh, well, that's not needed anymore. That's not something that people do. That's not something that's necessary. And it's like, well, I still use dreadnoughts for that purpose. I use dreadnoughts to duel bosses even. And it's like, there are some elements about the game that are completely lost when you play at such a high power level. Like, the thing is what, we will get into about WIS'ADEL, about, her talent, but it's like, you don't need to worry about things like deployment order. You don't need to worry about things like DP management. You don't need to worry about, needing to use the certain specifics of certain operators because those specifics no longer have value. And so I think that's like kind of a mental disregard that like some people have had over something like Crown Slayer. Like when I look at Crown Slayer as S2, I'm like, oh, this is a really cool niche. She's meant to kind of be this support, this defensive supporter to help reduce incoming damage for your enemies. And a lot of people probably didn't even just look at that concept and think that's useless. Why would I ever need a defensive supporter when what makes the game good is just killing things? It's like, why would I ever need to put down... why would I ever need to use S2 Crown Slayer when I can just kill the thing? Why would I ever need to use, an operator like Winflit when you can just use another operator that does a bunch more damage? It's like you have all of these different kinds of elements that make the game what it is that are completely thrown to the side. It's like Phantom is, I think the only like, there's what, like 4 6-star executors now? Is it 4?
I think there's just the 3.
No, because you have Yato, Texas, Phantom, and Crown Slayer, right?
Oh yeah, then there is 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and Phantom, like Phantom and Gravel are like the only 2 defensive executors like in the game, and it's like Phantom's S1 is really, really good at what it is, and I'm sure there are people who have never used Phantom's S1 for like its Gravel-esque purpose. And I'm sure people kind of treat a lot of these like use cases as though it's exclusive to niche knights, when it's like, these are elements that are core to what make Arknights Arknights. These are specific niches and use cases that are important to the game as a whole. These are tools that you are meant to be using, but these are tools that will never see use because the one-size-fits-all key that everyone was given, fills in these solutions anyways. And it's, again, it's kind of undermining a lot of the nuance of Arknights. And you're never able to evaluate operators on that level. You're never capable of trying to... Because when you look at everything in the lens of DPS, obviously you're never going to be able to look at what makes an operator niche, what makes them good, what their kit is trying to do. Instead, you're just going to be looking at it through the lens of like, oh, well, Crown Slayer does poor damage with her S3. Or like, or even people who say like Crown Slayer's S3 needs to have the new module in order for it to be good. And it's like, it's an insane stun uptime as is. It's a 66% stun uptime on a single target, on 3 targets. And it's like, how is that not good enough? Why does it need to be 100%? It's because it already is insane at stalling anything that's stun vulnerable. It's already really good at like reducing incoming damage, and it's like, she does exactly what she's supposed to do, yet people expect her to be something that she's not, purely because they're looking at these things through the lens that an operator like WIS'ADEL teaches them. It teaches you to just kind of, don't focus on the niche interactions, don't focus on that kind of stuff. Instead, just use the best things. And so, yeah, I think we should talk about WIS'ADEL.
Yeah, and like I said, in my Elite Zero level 1 clears, I've only used WIS'ADEL once in any serious capacity, and that is because I heavily disagree. Well, going back to what I was saying earlier, I would probably go so far to say that I hate her E2 design in so
100%.
many ways,
I
and that
I don't.
is and that is the reason why. And that is the reason why, even though in Elite Zero level 1 my operators are so weak, I refuse to use WIS'ADEL because of her E2 design. In my opinion, goes against everything that I like about the Arknights gameplay.
Yeah.
So getting into her S3, so for the record, I think her S1 and S2 are fine, and her first talent is also fine.
Or do you want to talk
I
about
don't have
that?
any problems with that.
Do you want to just talk about that just so we can explain why? Because I do agree. I 100% agree.
Okay.
Because her S1, the
So
point of her
her,
S1 is that it's just. I think Rosamontes has a very similar skill where it is just like extra
yes, she
shockwave with
does.
stun.
Yeah.
And to me, yeah, it makes sense.
Uh,
I do think you're right. It is pushed for like an S1 just because there's 2 additional aftershocks rather than 1. And so in like the early game where things have like no defense, it's like, "Oh wow, this is
yeah.
kind of a lot of extra damage." But for general play, it's like, yeah, this is exactly what I'd expect out of a flinger crit skill. More shockwaves, some stun. Yeah.
Yeah. So getting into the with the comparison with Rosmantis' S1 is that WIS'ADEL focuses on physical damage, whereas Rosmantis' S1 does an extra instance of arts damage. So there is a difference there, and I do like that.
Yeah.
That difference. So going into her first talent, she attaches an after image, and it has a chance to explode and stun enemies, dealing extra physical damage. So it's just kind of like just this bonus thing, and it kind of plays into the aftershocks being like, oh, you get so many more hits to have the chance to make that thing explode.
Yeah. Like to me, I
So
look at
that
this.
that
And
is fine.
yeah, to me, I look at it and it's just like, oh, this is like a crit. This is just a crit talent. It's like this is Cruce. Like this is she
Basically,
has
yeah.
a 15% chance to do like a crit, but they apply the crit to the aftershocks, and it's like, okay, that's a cool element. The stun is a little overkill, but she's
Yeah.
WIS'ADEL. She's W.
Well, yeah. W is all about the stun, so
Yeah,
that's fine.
it's Hodor synergy. It's Hodor synergy. It's again, I
Yeah,
won't.
yeah.
It's a push skill, but I agree with the design behind it. I think it is not how I would design a flinger, but I do think that this is something that does. It's a way to implement a general crit skill into flingers, and so I think it does a good job of doing that. And her S2, I really like her S2 because for the same reason I don't want to say really like it, but I think that what it's going for is something that I do like. Because again, this skill is pushed as fuck, especially with her talent. But it's very similar to Lava the Purgatory's S1, where the whole point of it is that you're attacking multiple targets, so you get the overlap and splash damage, which is something that works very well with flingers because they have just such a large, splash radius with the aftershocks. And so to me, I'm like,
Yep.
oh, this is actually a really cool idea to give to a flinger. Again, skills pushed as fuck, but if I could see a very similar skill on like a 5-star of something that's just like, oh, she attacks multiple different things, because again, there's elements of the skill that are kind of pointless. It's like she doesn't need to have an attack interval introduction. It's like the overload is a little fucking overkill. But you know,
Yeah.
the main idea of the skill is something that I do understand and I think works well for what you're trying to do. And plus, since actually, I don't even know if that's how that works. I'm not sure if her attacking multiple targets each have a different instance of possibly. No, yeah, it would. It would. So, like, this would.
It should.
It
Yeah.
synergized with her S1 very, very well because you have all of the different aftershocks all having a chance to blow up the mine. And so it's like, okay, this is. You're paying attention to the subclass, you're doing something interesting with it. Again, it is funny, though, to look at WIS'ADEL and be like, oh, her S1 is just Rosmantis, her S2 is just Lava. Or Lava in S-Gen, I guess I should say. And then, so it's like she's
her her S2 is Rosmantis S3, but with a lower ceiling, and she doesn't have the block requirement.
Yeah.
That's how I see it, but
I'm just, obviously I'm speaking from my experience.
not
just
not exactly the same, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm more speaking about like just the idea of like, you know, Lava and Asgen are all about like, oh, we can hit multiple different things to combine the splash, the AoE.
Yeah.
Which to me I think's cool design space for any kind of like AoE operator. And so it's like, yeah, it's kind of interesting how if WIS'ADEL was a 5-star, she'd be fine. But yeah, then we have but of course, because again, it's like that's like the small glimpse of Hypergriff caring, of just like, okay, we have to add some element to WIS'ADEL that actually fucking like is good and isn't just, you know, absolute slop. But then we get into her S3.
So do you want me to go on the full rant on her E2 kit?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. I went on my rant earlier, so you could go off.
Okay. So the first thing is that she gets access to her Revenant Shadows, which gives her camouflage. And these Revenant Shadows are so tanky that they can't be destroyed realistically by anything other than hard-hitting elites or bosses.
Oh, should we talk about her second
And her
talent?
S3 gives
Because of the Revenant Shadows?
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Well, I'm just saying, like, should we just talk about it real quick for context? Just in case someone's watching this and they don't know what WIS'ADEL does.
Okay, the Revenant Shadows are the crystals she summons, and they have 3,500 HP, apparently, 50 res for some reason, and 600 defense, which
So that's
is
7.
enough to pretty much nullify any basic ranged enemy in the game.
Yes, and
On top of that,
yeah.
And on top of that, it inflicts a slow to enemies within WIS'ADEL's attack range. And her skill 3 gives her more Revenant Shadows.
They not only don't have their own range, they use WIS'ADEL's very, very large range, and they do arts damage because, you know, defense is difficult.
Yeah.
They slow the enemy so that they can't escape WIS'ADEL's range, and she gets 2 of these, and as long as WIS'ADEL is next to them, she gets camo. So not only do the Revenant Shadows tank for her in the sense that, you know, they will gain aggro because they're deployed after her, but even if you somehow fuck that up, you just can't target WIS'ADEL. You can deploy her wherever the fuck you want as long as there is a deployable tile next to her. She will deploy a Revenant Shadow because of her second talent and will just be invincible. And then with her S3, she gets 2 more of these. For forever. They don't even go away.
And on top of that, all of these Revenant Shadows that give her that survivability, her skill only needs 10 seconds to charge because, you know, it is 2025. We can't be waiting no old man Silver Ash 15 seconds. Everything is 10 seconds or nothing, baby. Because this is 2025.
Every 6-star S3 starts almost fully charged because everything's a heli drop. Because isn't that what you guys wanted? You guys love comfort. You guys love just chilling and relaxing and just clicking a button 10 seconds after you deploy an operator and just let them do everything for you. Oh.
Yes.
And what's cool about
and on top of that, okay, go on.
I was going to lead you into it. Like, and then what's cooler about WIS'ADEL
is that her splash radius greatly increases to being half the stage. She gets ammo, so you can't waste her skill by accidentally misclicking. And she gets so much damage that basically everything without damage reduction specifically dies. So tell me.
If I remember correctly, isn't it like 5k instance damage? And then the 2 after.
Might even be more than that.
For what I've seen, I swear it's around like the higher end of 5k. But not only do you have that, but you also have the 2 aftershocks that are given to her by nature of her being a flinger and having a module. So if something's still fucking alive, no they're not. Oh, and her talent 1 has a 100% chance to trigger, so everything's fucking blowing up instantly.
Right, yeah. So, well, what I was going to do when... like I said earlier, I do plan on making a dedicated WIS'ADEL video to explain this more in depth of why I would go so far to say that I hate WIS'ADEL as, for sure, her E2 design, is because it does everything in its power to babysit you.
Yes.
To an almost insulting degree. Because, oh, you deploy her, she gets a tanky thing to bait, she can't be targeted. Oh, 10 seconds later, she gets 2 of those. Oh, they slow, they deal arts damage. She has the splash radius of half the stage. She does so much physical damage that defense is irrelevant. So bosses with need damage reduction in order to be worth anything. And on top of all of that, 50 seconds charge time for this insane skill. So you don't have to worry about skill timing because it has ammo instead of a regular duration skill, and the splash radius is so big.
And you can deactivate it, meaning that you can always optimize its cycle time.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that too. And then, like I said, the splash radius is so big that even if you mistime your skill, the splash radius will cover whatever you want dead, essentially. And all of this combined into one kit, and also the whole power creep of it, is what frustrated me so much when I thought of this kit. Because I saw her skill 1, I saw her skill 2, and I was like, oh, well, this is kind of cool. And then you get to her S3, and everything is thrown into the trash bin for the sake of being the best at everything. Like, you have this whole paragraph of what she can do, what her talents are, and her gameplay boils down to deploy her, activate her skill, you win.
Yeah.
That's it.
You
don't need to worry about survivability, you don't need to worry about skill timing, you don't need to worry about positioning, practically. Nothing. It dumbs down the gameplay to press button to win.
It also hits air.
And... oh, yeah, that is an important clarification as well, because...
I just wanted to say that
as we know...
I just want to say that again because you're right. It babysits you. And the only downside that this skill could have, in the way that flingers can't hit air. Yeah, haha, Rasmontis can hit, contrail. We're not talking about that. Flingers don't hit air.
Right.
Period. Gray's S2 can also technically hit air, but that's not what we're fucking talking about. The downside that is innate to flingers as a sniper subclass is, again, it doesn't show up anywhere. It's completely silent. It is purely there just for the sake of, you know what? You did your best. You put down the WIS'ADEL, you clicked a button. the pesky drones can go bye-bye, and, you get to win the game
Yeah.
even if the boss is in the air. It's like, there's no point to it other than, as you said, to babysit the player. It is meant to be the easiest fucking thing to use possible. There is no downside to the skill other than her attack interval is long. And even then, like...
Which doesn't even matter anyway.
Yeah, does it really matter that much? Because in Arknights...
Because
In Arknights, instance damage is always better than rapid attacks. Always. It just doesn't fucking matter because she's doing like 5k, 6k, 7k damage to a single target, and then 2 extra aftershocks that are easily going to overcome defense, and then her talent S1 is guaranteed to activate, so you're just causing all these chain explosions that just blow fucking everything up. And it's like, well, what's the fucking point? Why not just print a skill that says kill every enemy on screen? Even bosses. It's...
And that is... And with WIS'ADEL, well, WIS'ADEL and Logos, that banner specifically was how I got really fed up with the power creep in the game. Because, we had our powerful units, we had the original, way back when, it was Silver Ash, Aya, and Exia to a certain extent. And then we moved on from that. Okay, we have Suitor, we have Mjolnir. Those previous hyper carries that we had, you still needed to watch out for things. You still needed to time their skill when you needed to at the proper time. You still needed to cover their downtime. You still needed to worry about their survivability. Even for Suitor, that hasn't even...
her. You have to at least keep Surtur alive, and with Mjolnir, he doesn't do anything unless you activate his skill. Right. They still fucking carry you, but you still have to put in the base amount of effort to actually try and learn and use them. They're still horribly overpowered. But there's still at least something to them that acts as a drawback. And you could at least make the argument that maybe it was an oversight. Because again, you're talking about like Silver Ash and Aya. Back then, like, all the 6 stars were relatively balanced, and so to me, Silver Ash being OP just seems like, oh, this was a hiccup, and it was a mistake that Hypergriff can't like undo because it's a live service gacha game, and people would get pissed if you nerfed an operator, which to me makes sense. But that sowed the seeds of this is now what is to be expected. This is what you guys want. And then that one accident just eventually led into more and more and more of this because that's what people want. And now we're just in a boat where, again, at least with Mjolnir and Surtur, you could say, hey, maybe they were accidentally overcooked. Maybe they were just like a little too much on accident. But then you look at things like WIS'ADEL and Logos, and there's no excuse anymore. This is the most blatant shit ever. That it's like, yeah, Hypergriff genuinely does treat you like a fucking baby.
The thing for me too, for the old school carries, shall we say, of Silver Ash and Aya is still amazing to this day, regardless of what people have said with Logos being out and Nymph and all that. Aya is still amazing.
They're all still good.
For Silver Ash,
they're all still very good operators.
Silver Ash. So Silver Ash can still perform, but what I was gonna point out especially is that both Aya and Silver Ash's, their skill 3 has 90 SP costs. It's like, if you mess up, if you mistime their skill, you either need to retreat them or completely wait out that SP cycle.
Yeah.
So if you, even though that they're super powerful, they're gonna wave clear anything while they're active, especially at the time. If you don't time it properly, you can be screwed. Whereas for these newer 6 stars, especially if we look at WIS'ADEL and Logos, hey, you only need to wait 50 seconds, while in the case of Logos, 45 seconds. It's like, why do we have skills that are like, oh, well, I get to screen wipe the whole stage in their attack range. Oh, and I only need to wait 40 seconds for it to come back?
And
That's nothing.
and Logos has his
Especially
S1.
with SP.
Logos has his
Yeah, and
S1,
Logus
which
has his S1.
also has like, infinite duration, completely wipes out any peons in the stage, and then also
Right,
gives you a
yeah.
shit ton of range. And it's just like it is also kind of obvious that when you look at some operators, and it's like they kind of lean into being quote unquote AFK operators, that they're meant to be just they play
Yeah.
themselves in a way. And to me, it's
Mm-hmm.
just like it just has become that blatant that operator design has been dumbed down to a point where comfort is literally the only thing that these operators provide, and it allows you to completely invalidate the game part of Arknights. And I've heard people say like, oh well, I work a hard job, I do things, and Arknights is my way to unwind. And it's like, okay, fine, but the point of a game is to play the game, not to sit there and just let the stage play itself while you sit there and watch it happen. To me, I can't look at an operator like WIS'ADEL and Logos and think that these are good designs in any way. Because I understand who they're appealing for. I understand that these are meant for people
Mm-hmm.
who want comfort above all else. And that's mainly what we're here to talk about. We're just here to talk about kind of the negative effects
Yeah.
of wanting comfort as a design. And when you prioritize comfort above
And,
all things, you end up completely taking the game part out of Arknights, and you will only just be given complete absolute generalists that excel at literally everything and prevent you from struggling in any regard. And to me, it's like, at what point are you even playing the game anymore? At what point is Arknights even Arknights and not just any other gacha game? And to me, that's just kind of the part that sucks, is that it's kind of the slopification of Arknights. That's a fucking YouTube video title. That Arknights started as this. It still is. Arknights is still the best gacha game on the market. But as time went on, it
mm-hmm.
had to slopify itself to appeal towards the gacha market of having these overly power crept operators. And to me, it's like that takes a lot of the good essence out of Arknights. And to me, it does just kind of suck. Because again, people can play with whatever the fuck they want. If someone enjoys, clicking WIS'ADEL S3, blowing up the stage, that's fine. But again, I do feel that there is the element of just like, you are being babysit. You are having the game kind of play itself. You can't pretend that there's deep nuance to WIS'ADEL. She is just meant to auto clear the stage.
Yeah.
She's meant to make the game as easy as possible for you. And if that's what you want, sure, fine, whatever, do whatever the hell you want. You're not me. As long as this kind of design stays in 6 stars and not in 5 stars, I'm fucking fine. But it does worry me that like one day we're gonna get a 5-star that it just completely trumps every other 5-star, and it's just like it does worry me. I'm not gonna use that 5-star. I'm not gonna do that kind of stuff. And I think you've made the point, especially with this most recent event, that Arknights has taken a favor on damage reduction effects rather than high defense because of WIS'ADEL. They're trying to kind of rebalance the game around WIS'ADEL for some reason. I don't know why. Because I don't know why they're trying to make the game difficult for WIS'ADEL users, because obviously that's not why they didn't pull WIS'ADEL because they enjoyed the nuances of WIS'ADEL. They pulled for WIS'ADEL because they want to breeze through the game. Big boom, yeah. And so it's like, I don't know why make boss stages more difficult for the WIS'ADEL user. Like, just let them auto clear the stage. That's what they want. That's the point, right? Like, it leads to me now having to clean up the mess that the WIS'ADEL user made. And it doesn't even matter because the WIS'ADEL user can still fucking overcome this shit. But it's like, in the most, in this event, you have the damage, and this event, people can be watching this in the future. But, what the fuck's the event called?
In Thorn's Altars event.
Exodus from the Pale Sea.
Exodus of the...
Yeah,
Pale Sea.
The boss is focused more on damage reduction. He has decent defense and resistance, but it's not that hard to overcome it. The main point is that
Right.
he has his damage reduction during his phase 2, is that if he's not being blocked, he has a lot of damage reduction, making it really hard to just put down WIS'ADEL and have her, destroy everything. And I'm sure you
And
could
also
even...
he does the AoE as well, which can target WIS'ADEL's crystals, which can kill her
Yeah, and you have like the
as well.
corrosion, which can reduce the defense of the Revenant shadows. It can't target WIS'ADEL though, because she's camo. Because again, the easiest operator to use in the game. But
Actually, to their credit, if a crystal does get targeted, the AoE will damage WIS'ADEL
oh, you're
because
right. You're
camo
right.
is not
Yeah, you're right.
invisibility.
I forgot that he
Which is
for
kind
some
of
reason does AoE on top of his like spin attack, which I don't know why. That feels like an
yeah.
extra step. But yeah, that's probably like anti WIS'ADEL stuff, and it's like, why? Why?
Yeah, I actually used both the global range casters, Lapland and Golden Glow against him because I mean, I knew that I could deal with him, but his AoE attack especially was so annoying to deal with, I just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I still used operators to block him when the two casters are targeting him to remove the damage reduction. So
yeah,
I still felt like I was sort of interacting with the stage, even though that I was kind of cheesing it as well.
yeah. But
Um, but
just
I
on
also
the idea of using of the game trying to fix the mistake that WIS'ADEL caused, like because with the
right.
what was the Lapland event, like the whole like there's a bunch of enemies that have a bunch of damage
Oh
reduction
yeah,
when
yeah.
you're not doing that kind of when you're a bunch of damage reduction when you don't have Carnival going on, and it's like it's this weird attempt to try and make WIS'ADEL users interact with the stage mechanics when that's not why they're playing the game. So I don't know
And
why they're doing that, and it only negatively affects
and
us
and
because you can just use Logos
and
because Logos gets a lot of
I
fucking
do
damage
want
reduction.
to I do want to talk about that specifically because there are so many times, and I'm going to go more in depth with it whenever I eventually do my WIS'ADEL video. But in regards to the power creep, especially, like I've heard so many times, oh, Arknights is a single player game, so power creep doesn't matter. And it's like, sure, if this was a completely finished game, like for an example, I grew up playing the Ratchet and Clank games.
Yeah,
And in those games, there is an end game weapon called the Rhino, which is completely overpowered, but it also requires a lot of money in order to get and a lot of time to upgrade. But as soon as you
yeah,
fully upgrade it, especially, you can steamroll the whole game. Well, that doesn't matter because you can choose not to use it and it's an end game thing, blah blah blah. But the thing with Arknights is that it is a live service game. It is not completed, and like you said, we every time that the developers are like, "Hey, let's have this operator, um, like the sniper in Exia Alters event, Lemuin,
Lumawin,
probably not how you say it.
lemon,
Yeah,
pink
I,
lemonade.
I'm probably not saying her name correctly, but
I don't think I am
you all
either.
know.
It's pink
She
lemonade.
does she does like 10k or it was either 8 or 10k every single hit, and it's like at some point it's like if every single 6-star operator does 10k physical damage, and what are the developers going to do? And we've kind of seen a little bit of a shift, especially since chapter 14, where now we randomly have basic enemies with 4,000 defense and 90 res. Chapter 14, it was fine because we had the true damage storms and whatever,
Yeah,
but then we get to Delicious and Dungeon and Use event coming up. Why are there random basic enemies that have 4,000 defense and 90 res? It's because the damage has gotten so ridiculous And also with the Lapland Altars event, that 90% damage reduction, our damage has gotten so ridiculous that in order for something to be even remotely tanky, they need those ridiculous stats.
Yeah.
Remember when Patriot came out? Well, you probably weren't playing
No,
when
I was not.
Patriot came out.
I was not.
Um, when Patriot came out, he was one of the well, especially back then, he was basically the toughest boss that we have ever faced, and that is because he had 90 res and 2100 defense. Now we have basic enemies with 4000 defense.
Yeah. I will
And
say
telling
though,
me,
I will say though, I personally am not too offended at like having the little berry metal crabs, because when I look at that, I'm just thinking like, oh, okay, I use acid drop, I use elemental damage. It's like I look
I
at that
mean,
and I'm like, okay, I
right,
have the tools to deal with that. That's fair. However,
right.
you can of course make the argument of like, well, not everyone has well, everyone has acid drop. Not everyone has like a built acid drop. It's we have the ability to clean up these issues, but not everyone is fully knowledgeable on how to deal with them. So, but ultimately, it's just like I understand where you're coming from, and I do think you're right. It's just like we have received not to a point where it's incredibly problematic, because again, we have the
Right.
tools to deal with them. We do have like the little berry guys. And also you have the whole idea of the event of you're cooking in the pot and you can give your operators buffs. But yeah, it's like 4,000 defense is something to where like crushers can't even get that high. And so it's like, yeah, you do have to rely on acid drop to deal with it. And it's like again, to me, I'm fine with that because that's an excuse to use acid drop, and I think that's fine. But it does run into the issue of just like, what if it gets worse than this? What if we do reach a point where we do have like incredibly statted units with damage reduction, so now acid drop doesn't even work? It's like, what if we get an event where like all of the enemies are reborn and now we have all of this insane damage reduction and that we can't really do anything about it? And eventually we're just going to get a point to where we can't even really use like elemental damage anymore, because we're going to have like probably things
Right.
with insane elemental res. And so I hope we're not going to get to that point, because currently we're fine. Again, they're pushing it. Hypergriff is pushing it. They're a little cat. They're
Right.
shoving like the vase closer and closer to the edge. They're far from the edge, but they're pushing it closer. And to me, right where we are right now, I'm fine. I think it's fine, because I, as someone who doesn't use 6 stars, am perfectly capable with completing the content. And yeah, I suck. I
Yeah.
suck at the game. I can't do all of the stages all the time, but to me, I don't really give a shit, because I'm fine with not completing things. But
Yeah.
I'm okay with some of the stat inflation, as long as it's few and far between. Because again, at least with in like
Right.
Delicious on Terra, it was just the metal crab enemy, and that was it. And again, just pop that acid drop, deal with it. But if we do reach a point where it's just like, now all like we have an event where all of the like the basic enemies have like have like A tier HP. They have like 20k HP and like 400 defense, or all of the elites start to have like 50k HP and like 1500 defense, and we just reach a point where the stat inflation is just so much to where it genuinely does end up like fucking over the game, or we need to be like, it's good that they want to encourage people to use stage mechanics, but sometimes it can be a little overbearing, like with the like something I did not like about, I did like the firework mechanic for the Lapland event, but I didn't like the stages where they forced you to use it because they would have enemies that just like completely overpower your operators, and the ring fire dancer guys. Like, those guys are really hard to deal with, and you'll
Yeah.
just end up dying under them. But you're supposed to die under them, and you're supposed to use the balloons to prolong the carnival. And it's like this.
Yep.
It's not like, this is a bit much. Like, you're not. It's not me interacting with the cool stage mechanic in order to gain an advantage. This is me literally being forced to use the stage mechanic, and at that point, my own input on the stage is mattering less than me just kind of doing what the stage wants me to do. And to me, it takes away a bit of that agency.
Right.
And that is something that I do fear, a bit in the future. That because of this whole, like, of wanting to have stat creep, you end up with certain events that are just so fucking reliant on the stage mechanic for you to do anything in order to get the WIS'ADEL players to play the stages, that you as the player have significantly less agency over what's going on. Again, currently right now we're fine. Currently right now, again, the carnival thing was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
But right now we're fine, and I don't think we have reached a point yet where I can conclusively say that WIS'ADEL has fucking ruined the game. But you are correct in the idea that that it's a single player game, or people are correct when they say it's a single player game. It shouldn't matter. Which, if I'm just playing the game, I shouldn't have to pull for WIS'ADEL. That's obviously stupid. But
right.
It is still possible for the design decisions of those kinds of operators to affect the design decisions of other operators. And to me, a huge part of the game isn't really meant for me purely because of that kind of mindset. Like, I don't enjoy a lot of modern 6-star designs because of the expectation that they're meant to be overpowered and overbearing, and they're just kind of meant to completely babysit you and clear the stage really easily. And so it does affect me. It obviously, I don't give a shit because I can just I have loads of operators to enjoy, and I still get 5 stars. I still get a bunch of really cool new operators that are really, really fun. And so I'm fine. I wouldn't jump the gun yet and say Arknights is ruined because of WIS'ADEL. WIS'ADEL's existence hasn't fucked up the game enough. But I do think it is 100% possible that WIS'ADEL design and this overly comfortable design can lead to negative design decisions in the future. And I do think a lot of that does just have to do with the fact that I am in the minority of the Arknights. Like, you and I are in the minority of the Arknights community. Like, we're people who play the game of Arknights rather than the gacha game of Arknights. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would listen to this and be like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? And so it's like, you can obviously, people are going to vote with their wallets on what they want. And obviously I don't spend money on the game, period. But it's not like I even would want to spend money. Again, it's a big reason why I think that, like, you really don't pull for 6 stars you don't actually want. Because in this whole, like, everyone pulling for WIS'ADEL thing, like, I remember during the Icebreaker games thing, literally everyone was playing with WIS'ADEL. And I think it's like the only times where you wouldn't find that is like the occasional Giga Chad running like the R6 lineup. Like, that's it. It was impossible to find someone like me. Like, I was running Verdant and Kirara just so I could deal with the stage with the whatchamacallit, the gramophones. And it's like literally everyone was playing with WIS'ADEL to the point where it became a meme that you're supposed to awk the opponent's WIS'ADEL so they don't get to fucking use it because they'll take the fun out of the stage for you. Yep. And so it's like, it's a single player game, except the time where Arknights wasn't a single player game, and it ended up viciously ruining the experience for, I would assume, everyone. Imagine being the WIS'ADEL imagine being a WIS'ADEL user and you don't get to use WIS'ADEL, but your teammate gets to use WIS'ADEL, so they get to play the stage while you don't. So it's, I don't get it.
Speaking of the Icebreaker games, actually, I have a bit of a funny story. So I'm pretty sure it was my very first time playing the Bastion Stronghold mode, where it's like
I did not
had
play
multiple
that mode.
waves and you
I did not play that mode.
Okay.
I played the soccer mode all day. Most fun shit ever. You may continue.
I played the hard mode version. I think it was the first time that I ever, probably the first time and only time that I played the hard mode version, and that actually made it play like Annihilation, where DP doesn't generate normally, so you actually need to bring vanguards, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And my partner in that stage, I was playing with randoms for the record, and
Dumbest
he
thing you
was
could
of
do.
course was using he was obviously playing with a WIS'ADEL, and near the end, well, I think it was at the very end, I actually deployed Dusk at just the right time, and her two freelings from her first attack prevented anyone from leaking. So I got a zero leak hard mode Bastion clear, um, partly because of using Dusk. So I just wanted to, point that out. Um,
That's awesome.
and I thought that was pretty funny as well.
That is pretty funny.
But getting back, getting back to the whole power creep thing. So when it comes to the response to the super powered operators that we have, I wasn't. I mean, WIS'ADEL is obviously like the forefront of this power creep, but I was also meant kind of putting the blame on all of these push 6 stars. Like we look at
Oh yeah, yeah.
Necrast, playable Ablana. She literally has 2,400% attack in true AoE every 16 seconds. She does practically more damage than a Splashcaster does in her skill, let alone in that downtime. And
But that's not even it.
it is so
She also
and it's
summons
so
a fucking
ridiculous.
Giga Chad.
Yeah, she also has the summon, which she doesn't even need. But to get into that, her module genuinely makes me mad, because her module gives her plus 25% attack for free and a 15% damage bonus against the blocked enemies blocked by her summon. It's like, how do you get an operator that has 2,400% attack scaling, and they decide, oh, what do we do for her module? Like, let's give her free 25% attack bonus on top of all of that. It's like, when when does this get reeled in? Like, Thorn's altar, he felt like a well balanced, fun operator to use. And he doesn't melt everything on the screen unless he has the Sculptor buff, in my opinion. I mean, he does good damage without the Sculptor buff, but the
Bal-
Sculptor buff is really what makes him crazy.
I
But
think balanced relative to 6 stars, not balanced in the grand scheme of things. Because I do think that if you're
right.
using Thor, but you're right. You're right.
But my point is that it's not just WIS'ADEL, it's Logos, it's Lemuin, it's Necras. There's just like half of these 6 stars are like the balance fun focused operators, and then you have the other half that are like so overpowered that they basically trivialize most of the game, where there isn't a stage mechanic that directly counters them. And then you get to the point where, oh, how, like the map designers, how do we get to the point where stuff can be hard but still clearable with 4 and 5 stars, but like a relative somewhat of a challenge for 6 stars? And then like with the Lapland Altar event, it's like, are we surprised that Hypergriff came up with the idea of giving every elite enemy in that event 90% damage reduction? And everyone's seemingly cheered for WIS'ADEL. Oh, and Logos, hey, you gotta pull them. They're so overpowered. They're gonna, you know,
Yeah,
do
you're
all
right.
of this
You're
stuff for
right.
your account.
Like
And then it's
it's
like,
a good thing. Like power creep is a good thing to a lot of people, and it's something that I
right,
don't understand because it's like Viviana, for example. I think her kit's actually pretty cool. I think it's because an element of arts guards is that they're meant to be really good duelists and they're meant to be tanky. And so her having her whole shield mechanic, I do think that's really interesting. I think that's a cool way of doing that. But you have all these people saying, oh,
yeah,
she's
it is.
trash, she's awful. When it's like, first off, she's a 6 star. There's literally no such thing as a bad 6 star. Like, that's genuinely ridiculous to me to think that like a 6 star isn't like good. But when you do have people that look at like moderately balanced 6 stars like Viviana and are just like, oh, she's awful, she's terrible, she's a waste of resources, and it's just like, Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're voting with their dollars that what is good is power creep.
Yep.
What is bad is balance and niche. Because again, as I said earlier, and I'll keep saying
Right.
it, niche and specificity and designing around specialism. That's not a word. Designing operators to be specialists is the core of what makes Arknights Arknights. You have all of these different tools that you're supposed to use cleverly in trying to figure out how to overcome certain issues, how to overcome issues with different operators, how to create synergies, how to counter certain enemies. And when you do have 6 stars that try and do that, they're too niche. They're considered bad. They're
Right.
not considered good enough for general DPS or whatever. And it leads us into having operators like Monster, where why does she give 25%
Monster-
attack and attacks? Or what was it? It's just insane attack boost. Because the same thing I was saying with Shu
Yeah.
is that she's not just a medic. She's not just meant to heal things. She's also DPS. She's also support. She's all these other things purely just because that's what's
Right.
good. Oh no, it's
Yeah, and I could-
MON2R.
And I could definitely rant about Monster as well.
Oh, this is the
you would
enemy
like.
monster and not the. Okay, wait, fuck.
The operator,
Yeah, it's
so
her name is still
like-
stupid. Her name is so stupid. That's not how you spell monster.